Hi, I'm Dr. Vera Beloshitzkaya, and I work at the University of Salzburg in Austria. Hi, my name is Magda Szarota, and I'm a senior researcher at Lancaster University, and I am also an ombudsman person at Humanity in Action, a transatlantic organization working for human rights. So, I don't know, Vera, if you know what happened 18 years ago on this very date at United Nations. I have a guess, but why don't you tell us? So 18 years ago, on the 13th of December, the United Nations decided to adopt the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And we perceive it within our disability movement as a watershed moment and a milestone when it comes to not only thinking about disability in terms of human rights, but also in terms of recognizing our decade-long advocacy as a valid social movement. Because there are a lot of people, for a researcher who comes from the gender and politics perspective, and we engage a lot with intersectionality, where we look at different dimensions of inequality and how social structures structure our experiences and our life chances based on where we belong. But it's beyond that. It's always more than, membership in more than one group that amplifies the issues and the struggle and the disadvantages, but also privilege that we sometimes, we get to acknowledge. But usually when we hear about intersectionality, we hear about class, we hear about race, we hear about ethnicity, depending where you are in the world, in the context. You rarely hear about parenthood, and you don't almost ever hear about disability as that very obvious but so invisible, right, disadvantage. Okay, I don't want to use the word disadvantage, but rather membership in a group that structures one's experience, identity, and that overlaps with potentially there'll also be a woman, or being a queer person, or being a person with less resources economically. So yes. Thank you for asking this question. And first of all, I want to acknowledge that I'm really happy that there are more and more allies when it comes to disability issues from other disciplines other than critical disability studies, because we also need to build alliances among various disciplines and sub-disciplines. And indeed, this is not only strange that disability is kind of made invisible. I want to use a verb because it's not invisible per se. It is made invisible. It is overlooked. It is strange but also shocking if you, for instance, take into account that people with disabilities form the largest but also the most diverse minority in the world. This is rarely spoken in those terms outside of the disability circles, but we have to acknowledge the fact. Current assessments by the WHO are that about 16% of the total population are people with disabilities, and those numbers will be growing. So I'm just repeating this message. We as people with disabilities form not only the largest, but also the most diverse minority. This means that in a way, disability can be treated as an umbrella perspective while analyzing other types of identity statuses or other types of discrimination. So my plea to researchers in other disciplines other than disability studies is, please take disability on board. It is not only needed, but it will also contribute to your research being extremely innovative, timely, and cutting edge. Thank you so much for actually talking about it, because we did some assessment of existing survey data, for instance, how many surveys, we only focused on the full large surveys in Europe, but survey programs rather, I would say. And I think it's high time to start talking about the conceptualization of the disability model, because if anything, we only found very medicalized model of disability. And I think my question to you would be, what is our vision, maybe elaborating a bit on social model and disability, because I know a lot of people, when you ask a question, is it even how we ask a question is not very clear, because is it like, do I need to have a confirmation from the doctor? I know, in Central and Eastern Europe and post-communism, it has to be like commissions and somebody has to declare you disabled. But is it now how we see disability? That's one question. And another one is, again, besides measurement, how do we understand disability nowadays? Or we should rather. We probably don't, based on our assessment of data. I'll start by answering the second question. I think, first of all, you need to go back to the disability movement. There is decades and decades of work that has been done and a lot of knowledge making that is available. People with disabilities, advocates, should be treated as intellectual or organic intellectuals. So there, as you can imagine, it's a very vibrant intellectually field. So you will not find one correct definition of disability, because the debates on what disability isn't, or maybe how we should perhaps use other terms other than disability, those discussions and debates are present, and we should actually tap into them. But to just give you a brief example of the main debates around how we can understand disability, maybe you came across those two terms, two approaches. One approach is called person-first language, which means that, for instance, I, Magda Szarota, could call myself a disabled woman, or perhaps I would like to use a person-first language. So I would say, I'm Magda Szarota, I'm a woman with disability. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that when I use I'm a disabled woman, I probably am trying to allude to the social model of disability, which understands disability not as an impairment, but rather as a way of expressing political oppression and systemic discrimination. So when I say I'm disabled, it means that I'm disabled by society, the system. If I were to use the person-first language, saying I'm a woman with disability, I probably understand disability more like a type of impairment, and I also see it as one of many identity features of me being a full human. That's why I do not want to conflate myself, Magda, with disability. That's why I'm alluding, I do have disability, but first of all, I'm a person, I am a woman. So this is one of the examples of how disability can and is understood. And there is no one way correct way to use disability or understand disability. And again, I'm going back to what I said before. Please ask people with disabilities or disabled people how they want to be addressed, why they want to be addressed in such a way, because even by doing that, you will be able to understand how we evolved as a movement in various political and economic contexts over time. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. And I think I want to build a little bit on, the needs. So you said that we as researchers, there's a huge body of literature that, again, is not a canon, in social studies. And so I imagine we need to engage more. That is one of the recommendations that I'm hearing that we can do. And also I'm hearing ask before labeling. And also we need more in terms of, again, nothing, as your slogan always says, our slogan, I'll take it back, nothing about us other than us. But I was thinking, is there anything else that either researchers or civil society actors or just citizens, I was thinking about citizens, what can we do? Or what do you need from us? Or let's start with our field as researchers, because we do have a lot of influence over society, policymaking, etc. So we are doing a lot of important work, and it's key to do it, in a so-called right way. And yesterday, Anna Roots, who who was participating in our event. She's one of the most leading Polish disability activists. She actually brought up the issue of accessibility many times, and actually the lack of accessibility also when it comes to research. So one of the ways how to actually start the conversation about disability in a serious way is to enable people with disabilities, disabled people, to take part in research, in discussions, and in order for us to be part of such places, to have a place at the table, so to speak, we need to make those events accessible. And accessibility, as Anna said yesterday, doesn't mean only architectural accessibility, but it also means communication accessibility and other types of accessibilities, which are unfortunately, in a way, often forgotten when you are doing our knowledge-making, important stuff. Thank you.
For more information on the Push Backlash project, please visit our website at pushbacklash.eu or find us on Instagram. You can also find our latest podcasts and videos on Spotify or on YouTube. This production was funded by Horizon Europe, Grant Agreement Project number 1010-61687.